Hi, I'm Harry, and we're about to look into the belonging of Australian Indigenous people in modern society and the struggles they have faced after British colonisation, but more specifically, the lasting effects that this has left on Indigenous people over the last 230 years. We're going to take a look at a specific piece of art by Kevin Gilbert, one of Australia's first playwrights and avid Indigenous Australian rights activist. It is important for us to understand and acknowledge the difficulties and lasting effects the British colonisation of Australia has had on Indigenous populations. The colonisation of Australia was a seizure of not only land, but of people and their way of life. It was an act of dominance and ignorance by the British Empire to assert their lifestyle into the Indigenous Australians through segregation, mutilation, degradation, and the list goes on and on. Australia is seen as a settler colony, as the British settled over previously occupied land, therefore displacing the Indigenous population. We are still seeing the effects of colonisation today, an example being the 17-year average life expectancy difference between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, which can be greatly attributed to the introduction of unfamiliar disease and sickness by British colonists over 200 years ago. This disadvantage has led to a further mistreatment and a larger displacement of Indigenous Australians, as well as a continued lacking feel of belonging. Kevin Gilbert recreated the struggle between Europeans and Indigenous Australians in his artwork, Colonising Species. The artwork features two swans in the foreground, with one white swan clutching a lifeless black swan in its mouth. The white swan is a representation of British colonists. It is noticeably larger, signifying the power and advancement of the Europeans. The white swan seems to be completely unscathed, indicating the futility of the black swan in the fight. This is a direct link to the way Indigenous Australians would have felt fighting against the much more advanced European forces. The white swan also seems to be swimming along with ease, signifying how white Australians brush over these horrific incidents in our history and continue to move on without concern. The lifeless, smaller black swan has the blood of the oppressed Indigenous people dripping from its neck onto an easily recognizable European crown, which depicts the lives lost before the High Court's Mabo decision in 1992 to reject the previously accepted idea that Australia was terra nullius before the British settlement and had the importance of this as a turning point for Aboriginal justice. The background of the artwork creates the Australian Aboriginal flag, but more specifically in this case, the red represents a lake of blood, which the white swan is happily swimming through, completely unaware of the damage it has caused. The yellow represents a rising sun over the lake, to represent a new day for Aboriginal people and the beginning of a new age. And a black spectral sky showing various images and symbols associated with Aboriginal Australian history and the distance between them now and their past lives. As a whole, the artwork shows the impact and destruction, the British, and the turning point which we are now at, where the Indigenous Australians can now begin to feel like they truly belong. People need to think to themselves and ask how I would feel if I was in their shoes, and what I would want moving forward. It is especially important, now more than ever, for us to understand, acknowledge, and respect Indigenous Australian history and continue to make strides against the destruction of their culture in an attempt to make them feel like they belong and can engage with modern society. I hope you understand the role you can now have in helping make every Australian feel like they belong and continue to make decisions that benefit all Australians moving forward.